Game and Watch Gallery. It's a Game Boy game, obviously, so I'll show it working in a Game Boy. This is a collection of Nintendo's old Game & Watch games, hence it's called Game & Watch Gallery. It's got 4 games, 4 old, segmented LCD style Game & Watch games, but then 4 sort of remasters, or what they would be like on a modern, and by modern, of course, we're talking about running on a Game Boy, 1989 spec Game Boy, but how those games would be on there. And they did change some things. Some of the gameplay is actually different, so it's not just improving the graphics and the music. But yeah, here it is on a Game Boy. But what I really want to look at is this on a Super Game Boy. This is one of those games with like Super Game Boy added features, and it's actually really cool what they did with this. When I first started playing this on the Super Game Boy, I just played a couple of the games on modern mode, and it's got this bezel. The Super Game Boy has these built-in bezels, but some Game Boy games, they can store bezels, color graphic bezels for the Super Game Boy on the Game Boy cartridge. And so, there's a couple bezels in the modern mode, and, it's colorful. It kind of looks like the art style from Yoshi's Island. And I thought, oh, that's pretty cool. And I turned it off and, did something else for the rest of the day until later I came back, started playing it again, and I went into the classic mode, and this is when it blew my mind. This is like the moment, like, oh man, this is awesome. I gotta show this off, because they really went the extra mile here with the bezels. All 4 of the classic games, when you're playing them in classic mode, have their own dedicated bezel. And as you can see, what they tried to do, or actually they didn't try to do, they did quite successfully using the Super Game Boy, and make the border look like it's the actual bezel from a real Game & Watch. Again, these Game & Watch systems, these are all based off real Game & Watch systems, and they had that metallic bezel with the name of the game at the top and the Nintendo at the bottom, and it kind of stuck out a little bit. So they made it look 3D with some shading, and some using the Super Nintendo colors, because you're not limited now by the Game Boy. They can really make these bezels look awesome, and they did it for all 4 of the classic games. They all have a different bezel, a different border, I should say, that makes it look like the bezel from the real Game & Watch. And man, what attention to detail, going above and beyond for, the Super Game Boy. But also looking at the games have more color than what a Game Boy would allow. Like when you play a Game Boy on a Game Boy Color, like when you play an original black and white Game Boy game, this is an original black and white Game Boy game. It's not like one of the black cartridges or the clear cartridges that has either some Game Boy Color enhancements or for Game Boy Color. This is an original DMG black and white Game Boy game where you'd normally have like 4 shades of gray, which could translate to 4 colors in a way on the Super Game Boy. You usually have a palette where you can only have 4 colors on the Super Game Boy, but if you count the colors here, so you have like the red cross on the ambulance. It's got an orange light on top of it and the orange fire up in the top corner. You got the green bushes at the bottom. You've got the brown buildings on the left, and on top of that, the black moving characters represent the segmented LCD on the old LCD display, the black parts that would actually move, but altogether there's more than 4 colors on the screen. So again, they're really taking advantage of the Game Boy Color, where they can, I think, segment parts of the screen off and represent certain shades of gray, which would be on the Game Boy, to be different colors. But they can change it per section of the screen. So they can have the brown of the buildings on the left side and the green, for the plants at the bottom, and end up with more than 4 colors on the screen. So this is taking advantage of the Game Boy, the Super Game Boy, not just in the bezels or the borders, but also the amount of colors on screen. So that is awesome. I think this is the only game I own that really takes advantage of the Super Game Boy quite to this level. I know there's a Game Boy version of Donkey Kong that does this as well, and Space Invaders 96? Some Space Invaders game that's also on the Game Boy. I've seen those before, but I think this is the only one I own. And as a Game & Watch gallery, they just nailed it out of the park. This is the first time that I can think where Nintendo's really looked back at their history. Well, I guess, you know what, maybe that's not true, because this did come out, even though this is a DMG original Game Boy game, this did come out in 1997. So, yeah, like Super Mario All-Stars was out by then. And so, I mean, that was, you could say, that where they really went back into their history and, like, redid all their games. But, I mean, to go back at the Game & Watch, you know, to go back all the way before the NES, you know, the 80s, early 80s Game & Watch games. And some of these games might have come out in the late 80s, I don't know. They might have been post-NES. But, yeah, I think it's pretty cool that at this point they're like, we're going to go back pre-NES, look at the original segmented LCD Game & Watch games, convert them to Game Boy, but you know what? Go to town on the Super Game Boy. This is a really cool cartridge to own, and I'm glad that I bought it, and definitely glad that I checked it out on the Super Game Boy, because again, I was fairly impressed at first with the modern games, but it was really when I saw what they did with the bezels in the classic games that just literally blew my mind. So I opened this cartridge up to clean it, and surprisingly, it's got a battery backup inside. Not something I was expecting. This is not the kind of game, you know, this isn't an RPG like Zelda or Pokemon. So they went that extra mile to put that battery in there just so that it saves your high scores, because these are all games really based on a high score. So I think that's pretty cool. They went that extra mile to put the battery backup in there so that it saves all your high scores for all the games, classic mode and modern mode. So yeah, that's it. Game & Watch gallery for the Game Boy. I think it's definitely worth picking up. A cool collectible, cool piece of Nintendo's history looking back at the oldest of their electronic games, maybe? Yeah, we'll go with that. See you later.